My name is Faith and I am 29 years old. I still remember the exact moment my phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. The late afternoon light slanting through the blinds of my small apartment. Dust floating like tiny witnesses to what was about to break me. The message came from my parents' group chat. Formal even in pixels, and it read exactly like this. My parents texted me, "Don't come to our wedding anniversary party only. High society guests will be there." I stared at the words, rereading them until they stopped looking real, until they felt like something written for someone else's life, not mine. My parents were celebrating 35 years together, a milestone I had grown up imagining I would attend, smiling in family photos, clinking glasses with relatives who watched me grow up. Instead, the text drew a clean line through me. There was no explanation, no apology, just a clear instruction to stay, away because I didn't fit the image they wanted to present. I typed and deleted a dozen replies, my fingers trembling, but in the end I sent nothing. Because what do you say when your own parents decide you are an embarrassment? I put the phone face down and tried to breathe, telling myself I was an adult, that I had survived worse. But the ache settled deep in my chest anyway. That evening, while they dressed in elegant clothes and welcomed guests into a ballroom lit by chandeliers, so I stayed alone in my apartment, cooking pasta I barely tasted, listening to the neighbor's TV through the wall, pretending this was just another night. I told myself it was fine, that independence meant not needing their approval, yet every sound of laughter, drifting from the street below, felt like salt in an open wound. My parents had always cared about status, about how things looked, but this was the first time they had so clearly chosen appearances over me. As the hours passed, I imagined the party unfolding without my name ever mentioned, my absence explained away with some polite lie, and I wondered when I had become so easy to erase. Then, just as I was washing dishes, my phone rang again, sharp and sudden, and my sister's name flashed across the screen. I answered, already bracing myself, and that was when everything shifted. Because on that very day, Sister called, her voice shaking, not angry at first, but confused, almost afraid. She didn't bother with greetings. She blurted out, "Why did you hide this from the family?" And the words hit me like a slap. I asked her what she meant, my heart pounding, and she sucked in a breath before saying, "Mom and Dad just saw the news," and her sentence trailed off, heavy with something unspoken, and I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. I hadn't hidden anything, at least not intentionally, but the way she said it made me realize that whatever was happening at that party was bigger than hurt feelings. She told me guests were whispering, phones were being checked under tables, and people were starting to ask questions, uncomfortable ones, about why I wasn't there and why my name was suddenly connected to headlines. Scrolling across their screens, I leaned against the counter, my legs weak, realizing that my quiet night alone was colliding with their carefully staged celebration. The irony burned. The very event they had excluded me from was now unraveling because of me, because of something they hadn't bothered to ask about or understand. As my sister talked, her voice cracking, I felt anger rise, not hot and explosive, but cold and steady. For years I had swallowed their judgments, their comparisons, their subtle reminders that I wasn't impressive enough, wealthy enough, polished enough. Tonight, without me even stepping into the room, the truth was forcing its way in. I didn't yet know how it would end or what it would cost. But standing there in my dim apartment, phone pressed to my ear, I understood one thing clearly. The story they told about me was finally colliding with the story I had lived, and the collision had already begun. The line went quiet for a second, then my sister whispered, "Mom and Dad just saw the news and the guests are asking where you are." And in that moment I understood how fragile their perfect image really was. While I stood barefoot on my kitchen tiles, still in the same sweater I'd worn all day, my parents' anniversary party was cracking open under the weight of a truth they had ignored for years. My sister explained in rushed fragments how one of the guests, a business associate of my father, had recognized my name from an online article that had started circulating earlier that afternoon. It wasn't scandal, not the kind my parents feared, but success, my success. A feature about my work, my projects, my journey, shared and reshared, framed not with glitter but with substance. People at the party were pulling out their phones, reading headlines, murmuring, then looking around the room asking the same uncomfortable question. Why wasn't Faith here? That was when the whispers turned sharper, when curiosity turned into judgment aimed not at me, but at my parents. My sister told me Mom's smile had frozen mid-laugh, Dad's hand tightening around his glass as someone casually said, "Isn't your daughter the one everyone's talking about today?" I closed my eyes, feeling a strange mix of validation and sadness. This was never about revenge for me. It was about being seen, yet the irony was brutal. They had texted me clear as day, "Don't come, only elites are invited." And now those same elites were questioning their choices. My sister said Mom tried to brush it off, saying I was busy, but the more she spoke, the more the room sensed a lie. Someone else chimed in, mentioning how impressive my journey sounded, how inspiring it was, and suddenly my absence was louder than any speech. My parents had wanted a night of polished perfection, but the truth had slipped in through glowing screens and honest words. As my sister talked, her voice steadied, turning from panic to something else, maybe pride. She admitted she had always known I was capable, that she hated how our parents minimized me, but she never expected this moment to come like this, publicly, undeniably. I leaned against the counter, listening, picturing my parents standing there, confronted not by me, but by the reality they had refused to acknowledge. Then my sister lowered her voice and said guests were now openly asking, "Why would you exclude your own daughter?" That question echoed in my head. Why indeed? I didn't feel triumph. I felt a quiet resolve settling in. For years I had chased their approval, shrinking myself to fit into their expectations. Tonight showed me how pointless that had been. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my father. Short and stiff, asking if we could talk later. No apology, just an opening, but I didn't rush to respond. For once, I allowed myself to sit with my own worth. My sister said the party ended early, conversations awkward. The celebration hollowed out by unspoken truths. Guests left with polite smiles, but the damage was done. After we hung up, my apartment felt different, not lonely, but calm. I made tea and sat by the window, watching city lights flicker, realizing that being excluded had freed me from a table that never truly welcomed me. Days later, my parents did call. Their voices were careful, pride wounded, explanations tangled in concern about appearances. I listened, not to argue, but to understand my own boundaries. I told them how that text made me feel. How only high society, guests will be there sounded like I wasn't good enough to be their daughter in public. There was silence, heavy and overdue. I don't know if they fully understood, but I knew I no longer needed them to. My story was mine, finally, not something to hide or parade for status. And if this story resonates with you, if you've ever been made to feel small, excluded, or invisible by the people who should have stood by you, remember that your worth isn't decided by who invites you into a room, but by the truth you carry with you. If you want more real, powerful stories like this, stories about resilience, truth, and quiet victories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay with us for what comes next.